If you remember how to say it, when we talk about zeros and division, this seems to be the most complicated concept for students to get when it comes to zeros. Now, I'm going to discuss two ways how to figure them out. So what I did was I wrote it as a fraction first, because believe it or not, it's actually easier to see it as a fraction. Now, 0 is on the numerator top, right? And you have k, which is a variable down below. And if you notice, it spells OK. When you see it as 0 over k, our answer is going to be 0. It is okay for 0 to be on top. Okay? It is okay for 0 to be in the numerator. Therefore, your answer is 0. When you take a fraction and you turn it into a division problem, for like this type of division problem, you get 0. This line means divided by k. So the way you read it, 0 divided by k, is the way that you would write it in old school division form. This is 0 divided by k. This answer and this answer are exactly the same. The answer here is 0. Another way to see 0 over k in division format is to write it in terms of long division, like so. Again, you read this as 0 divided by k. This is 0 divided by k. Whenever you have fractions, you take these fractions, and if you were to let them fall like a tree, you would end up with 0. And you could think of this as the division sign instead of the curve sign that we're used to. So you have the 0 divided by k. And what you have then, again, if you just take this fraction and let it fall this way, 0 would end up down the inside. You've got this line here, which represents this division line here. So this is the divided by, and then you have k. And your answer is always going to be, again, 0 for this problem. If you didn't like the 0 and the k, you can write 0 and n. So you actually have kind of like the word on. So when this is on, again, your answer is 0. So this takes the same format as we did with the k value. Reading this as 0 divided by n, you can see how we still get 0 divided by n, which again gives us an answer of 0, whether you write it like this or like this. When you take this fraction, and again you tilt it so that it falls this way, it falls to the right, your numerator will always go inside, and your denominator will always go outside. So you have 0, one more time, divided by n. So this line, again, represents this line here, and my answer will always be 0. So this is your innie, this goes inside, and this is your outie number. Your innie and your outie. Now this is nice if 0 is on top, but the question then remains, what happens when 0 is in your denominator? If we're going to have the k, let's go back to using the variable k, and k can represent any number that we want. If we have k in the numerator and we have 0, or written as so, 0 in the denominator, notice that this spells KO like a knockout. All right, when that happens, when 0 is in your denominator, your answer is going to be undefined. Now, one of my students told me this a long time ago, that if 0 is under the division symbol, they called it underfined. Now that's really cute. That will help you to remember undefined. So under, underfined, undefined. Again, if we were to write this in terms of the way that we read this, this is k divided by 0. K divided by 0. Notice it spells still K-O. This is still undefined. If we were to take a look at this fraction, k divided by, and one more time, here's your division sign, just now turned this way. Okay, so it literally fell this way, so k would be here, and your 0 would be here. K divided by 0, again you can see it this way or like this. K divided by 0, k divided by 0, k divided by 0 will still give you undefined. If you were to use the n notation instead of k, notice it spells no. And again, when you see n representing some number, or a variable in this case, okay, whether it's a variable or n represents a number, you spell the word no. And what that means is that's not good, okay? No, you can't have it in the denominator. You will end up getting, again, undefined. Usually n and k are the ones that are used when doing these types of problems and understanding 0. Again, reading this, n divided by 0 is n divided by 0. And we get the same answer as usual from above, undefined. And again, the cute way of memorizing this is that 0 is under, so you call this underfined, undefined. You can also take this fraction, n divided by 0, and let it fall this way. And when it falls, you got n divided by, so here's your division sign again, that represents this division symbol here. You have n divided by 0. And again, this will give you undefined. If you remember how you said this, n, now watch this one. So you see n divided by 0. This is n on top, 0 down below. N on top, here's your division symbol, 0 follows. This is your any, this is your inside number, this is your outside number, any, outie. It's alphabetical order, like the top and the bottom, okay? So the any always represents the top number, any meaning inside the division symbol. The 0, right, is in the denominator. Well, that's fine, but 0 represents your outie number. So any outie, in this case, the way I say it ends up being alphabetical. Any outie, any outie, any outie. Let's do a few examples. We're going to determine the answer to this example. We have t divided by 0. Now, I don't really like this way of looking at it, but what I can do is I can look at it in terms of what I was showing you earlier. This is first, then you have this division symbol, and then you got 0. This is t divided by 0. If you change it to a fraction, it might be easier for you to see that this is undefined. I'm just going to write UD, but understand that this means undefined. Now your teacher may end up asking you to spell this out, but for my class, UD is fine. But by writing it as a fraction, it's easier to determine if it's undefined when 0 is in the denominator, or if it's 0. So I'm always going to take something that I don't like and change it back to a fraction. The first, okay, remember, this is this divided by 0. So whatever's before goes on top, whatever's after this symbol goes down below. Looking at this example, we have a on the outside and 0 on the inside. We do not say a divided by 0. That's not what this is saying. But what's interesting is, let me put this division sign in here instead of the little curved one that we normally see. And what you can do with this problem is actually turn it back into the fraction. Remember that it fell this way. So what you can do is actually take this whole problem and put it back into its vertical position, into the up and down position. And so if you were to actually take that and do that, you would have 0 on top and you'd have a down below. So now you got 0 divided by a. And again, whether you use 0 as the number 0 like this or you put a little line through it, that's fine. But notice that a is down below. Where is 0 on top? Well, if a was the same thing as using k, it's okay for 0 to be on top. So my answer would then be the number 0. So my answer is 0 in this case. So it's actually easier to see it as a fraction, I think, than any other format. But that's just me. Let's try looking at this problem. It's in lovely fraction form, but now we've got a number here. Well, 4 represents, let's use the k, all right, instead of 4, over 0 is 0. Notice that this spells KO or knockout. Well, if that spells knockout, then what we have is undefined. Or, one more time, 0 is under the 4. This is underfined. Let's look at another example. We've got 71 on the inside, and we've got 0 on the outside. Now, if you really remember what I was saying, this is inside and this is outside. And again, when you read these division problems, you read the inside first. So this is 71 divided by 0. If you want, and again, this is the way that I do it because it's easier to memorize, take your fraction one more time. It's like this. And we're simply going to tilt it back to a vertical position so that it goes straight up like a tree. And if we do that, we would get 71 divided by 0. So that's the reason why we say 71 divided by 0 when we see it in this format. So 71 divided by 0. Notice where 0 is. 0 is in our denominator. So if 0 is in my denominator, it's under the 71. It is undefined. What if we have a problem in which there is a negative number or a negative variable? Okay, not a problem. We're going to do it the same way. Notice this is a old school regular division problem. It's got the regular division symbol that everybody knows. 0 divided by negative 22. Okay. If you change it back to a fraction, now how did I know to put the 0 up on top? The 0, then you have this division symbol, negative 22. So when you have this old school division symbol right here, the way that you read it is the way that you would write it as a fraction, knowing that this is your division bar in your fraction. 0 divided by negative 22. And you can put the negative 22 in parentheses as the same thing. That's totally up to you. But it's really not a matter of notation right now. It's a matter of memorizing it or trying to figure it out. Notice that 0 is not under, 0 is on top. Well, you can also see it as, instead of okay, you can write it as on. You can say, oh yeah, it's on. Or you can write it as okay and realize that my answer, since 0 is not under, the only other way that we could possibly get an answer is if it's 0. So either it's going to be 0 or it's going to be undefined when it comes to these types of problems. And we are finished. Hasta la pasta.